Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another ITY video. Today I'm with Gordon Gakovic. He is the Managing Director for Software AG in Australia and New Zealand. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Alex.
So I thought I'd just ask you to give us a quick primer on the Software AG business globally and in the region.
So Software AG is a global organisation. We're number 2, I guess, in Germany itself. We're in the top 7 European IT organisations. We're in the top 25 organisations worldwide. So in essence, global organisation, many thousand employees, global representation.
And the short version of the services?
What do we do?
Yeah.
So Software AG effectively provides, is the leading provider of digital platforms to help organisations transform themselves and utilise IT capability and drive more business agility.
Sure. And that brings us to digital transformation, which is the big buzzword, and clearly there are many different viewpoints as to how companies transform, which we'll speak about in a moment. But what's your simple definition?
Digitalisation itself is really taking an organisation today, looking at where they want to be and looking at how you can incorporate technology to truly help them build out business agility. In its simplest form, that's pretty much what it is. We're finding that today organisations are using less than 10% of IT capability to drive more business agility. So we're about embarking on that journey and getting them to use more.
It's like that famous quote about Einstein who said we only use 10% of our brains, you know. It looks like we're only using 10% of our electronic brains these days.
We are. We're not using anywhere near enough.
So do businesses really understand what is involved in digitally transforming their businesses? It sounds like they don't.
No, Alex, and we'll talk a little bit later. I hosted a luncheon a while back and we had about 20 odd C-level execs and digital transformation leads across various industries, and I really wanted to understand where they were in the digital transformation journey. And what's interesting is that every organisation has a different viewpoint on what is digital transformation. And we went from one organisation saying, oh, we're actually embarking on a Windows 10 upgrade. Another organisation saying, I think we've just made a decision to bring in CRM.
Yeah.
And
in 2016.
In 2016, and then you go from other organisations that are totally transforming themselves as a business and getting into different lines of business. So it's quite relative in terms of where the organisation is in its journey. So there's no wrong, there's no right. It is a different journey for everyone, and everyone is at a different level of that journey. It was a really interesting lunch.
Well, and on that topic of everyone's on a different journey, I mean, where do you see Australian businesses standing on the adoption of digital transformation, and how are we comparing then against the rest of the world? Are we ahead, behind, about par?
No, I think we're ahead. There's certainly not a lack of desire. Everyone's jumping on the bandwagon. Not a lot of organisations really understand what it is. But there's certainly there's a big drive. They all want to get involved, a little bit like cloud. Australia's a leading adopter of cloud, whereas the rest of the world I think is lagging, Europe, US. But Australia's right at the forefront, and it's interesting. Australians seem to want to try everything, and they want to be the first at trying it. So we're almost like the benchmark for the rest of the world. And what's interesting is that a lot of organisations don't actually understand why they want to transform.
But they know that just like Uber has disrupted the transportation industry, I mean the cliche and buzzword cliche is now that you've got to transform yourself, you've got to disrupt yourself before someone else disrupts you.
Correct.
And in fact it's wider than that, which we'll get to in a moment. It's
correct. And what's really interesting when I go and talk to organisations, we get invited to do a lot of digital transformations. A lot of the organisations have actually failed to realise why they're still in business. And I go right back to basics, which is actually understanding what business are you really in and why are you still in that business. And when you can understand that, then you can have a discussion around, well, what does the 2B environment look like for this organisation? If they stay in business and they keep carrying on the way they are, where will they be in 3 or 5 years? Will they still be around? And if they do digitally transform, then what does the world look like for them in that 3 to 5 year paradigm? What sort of partnerships will they embark on? What sort of organisation will they be? How many organisations are truly having that Uber moment? You look at businesses that are transforming around us. You look at the Amazons, you look at what Google are doing, how they're affecting our everyday life. You look at the Uber you know, with the transport, the effects they're having, and then you'll see Uber restaurants coming out.
Yeah, well, Uber Eats came out yesterday. Yeah. I mean, it's Charles Darwin that said it's not the strongest that survive; it's the ones that are most adaptable to change.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the big thing. Humans don't want to change. You know, there are businesses out there still doing things they've done for the last 10, 20, 30 years, and wondering why. You know, they might not be growing or evolving at the same rate as they were before. And it also brings me to a point that I saw in an article that was, I think, written by Russell and Kogan from Kogan, talking about how they're an e-tailer or a retailer, they're a big data / analytics business masquerading as a retailer and able to use all those trends to figure out what they're really supposed to be selling. And it's a different business to what they thought they were in.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm finding that with a lot of organisations. They're looking for new streams of revenue, new channels of revenue. There's not a shortage of technology. You know, I'm a big believer that if you put enough focus into any technology, you'll make it work. But what there is a shortage of today is some really cool ideas for organisations to transform themselves and pick up on new streams of revenue and embark on partnerships they never would have thought possible to extend themselves on a global basis.
And we're going to come to that in just a moment. I want to ask you about examples of how Software AG is helping an organisation to digitally transform. What are you doing that's different? And what are some of the sectors in Australia that you're really helping to transform? But just a millisecond before that, we hear about digitisation and digitalisation. What's the difference? Because people are confusing that.
Yeah, it's actually quite funny. I hear, you know, they're digitising. Well, are they? I mean, digitisation really is nothing more than moving from
an analog process to a digital process.
Analog to digital, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas digitalisation is really taking on technology to transform what you currently do and want to do it better. And so I see the term used incorrectly quite a lot.
Yeah.
You know,
maybe an example is that you know, someone's scanning all their paper documents to PDFs, and that's digitisation. But digitalisation is running a paperless office.
Correct.
You know, as an
That's
example.
a really good example.
Yeah.
I might use that moving
Yeah, there you go.
Cheers.
So then, as I said, you know, how is Software AG helping companies to digitally transform? What are you doing that is different to everybody else out there claiming to do the same thing?
So we've been in the market for quite a while. You know, we were marketing digitalisation for many, many years, and it was a coin phrase that was picked up by some of the gorillas in the market, and everyone's running with it, but not a lot really know what it means and how they're going to help.
It's just a buzzword for them.
It's a buzzword. What we do different to any other organisation, we truly sit down and understand that organisation's business, what makes it tick, from a manual process. Forget about technology. The first phase is, what business are you really in?
Yeah.
And from that, why are you still in that business? And a lot of organisations don't really know. They've just evolved over 20 years. They've now looked at it and gone, well, for us to stay in the business, we got to move. And competitors are coming in, our market share's depleting. We're not going to be in business much longer. And for some of them,
if they keep going down the same path.
Correct.
Yeah.
And for some of them, you know, maybe the journey's over. Maybe it's easier to start a new business than to try and transform the one they have. A lot have a very, very good customer base. And you know, so when I look at the business and I go, well, okay, let's understand the business you're in. And with that comes a really good understanding of the people that run that business. What sort of people do you have versus the people you need to have in the new world? What sort of customers do you have today versus the customers you're going to have in the new world? What sort of partnerships do you have today, if any, versus the partnerships you need to have in the new world? And then we look at the KPIs, how you measure your business today and how that's going to be measured moving forward. And that's the cycle that we work through. And our digital platform enables an organisation to truly understand where they are, where they need to be, and
the steps.
And we embark on that journey together to help that organisation transform. So, you know, we've got business transformation modules, we've got process definition modules, we've got analytics inside the business, we've got big data capability. But what we've done differently to the others is we've wrapped all of that capability, that platform with all of those modules now wrapped inside a methodology. We've spent the last 3 to 4 years in developing that methodology, and that is our sustainable competitive advantage, because nobody else has gone to the trouble of developing a methodology to help organisations.
They may have slapped together disparate parts of
correct,
various
and, you know,
buzzwords.
and that's why, you know, our value proposition to the market is embarking on that total journey. We're not just here to implement an analytics module or a digital platform and then do a runner. We're there to sort of step you through the whole journey, so handhold. And the analysts are very excited about what we're doing. The SIs are very excited about what we're doing. We're different, and that's really where Software AG is coming to its own.
And I know you probably can't mention any specific customers, but what are the big sectors that are in Australia and New Zealand that are coming to you and really benefiting from this whole process?
I'd probably say our leading sector at the moment is banking finance. We're doing a hell of a lot in banking finance, retail, telco. We're also big in the utility space, but I'd say banking finance seem to be spending the most money wanting to transform. I think that's probably the one that's going through most change.
I mean, I was at a Gartner event yesterday. We were talking about Bitcoin and blockchain, and they were talking about how banks are big on Bitcoin and blockchain because they can see that's going to disintermediate them, disrupt them, and so they want to be at the forefront of that journey to make sure they get the benefits without being put out of business. So,
yeah, and when there's a buzz in the market about anything new coming, everybody wants to be involved, and there's this rush, and everyone's trying to understand what it's about.
But you need to be focusing on what is real and
versus
hype and what's going to fizz out. I mean, Gartner was saying that blockchain, Bitcoin, was at the peak of inflated expectations, and over the next 12 to 18 months is about to tumble into the trough of disillusionment before, and will be some time before it gets to the peak of the plateau of productivity, and that many of the investments people are making in things like Bitcoin and blockchain will be evaporated in 12 to 18 months.
Correct.
And that's where you need to really understand where to apply your resources.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think you're spot on.
So you mentioned the lunch. You recently hosted a C-level executive lunch, and these people were talking about their digital transformation journeys, and you were able to sort of speak about how these businesses were still thinking as though they were siloed and not taking advantage of the full opportunities. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, you sort of you embarked earlier, and you sort of said how is digital transformation changing the world, and what's going on, and I think the biggest change is that organisations are starting to realise that for them to prosper moving forward, they cannot operate in a silo.
I mean, that they may have, over the past 10 or 20 years, broken down the internal silos in their businesses, but that just turns them into one giant silo. Correct. And then they have all these other companies they need to be working more intelligently with, which digital transformation can help them to achieve.
And the best example, we had somebody there from an airline, we had somebody there from a retail wine provider, we had somebody there from transport, and these are all C-level execs embarking on a digital transformation, and they've got their own challenges of getting that approved internally. But you sort of sit there and you listen to their stories, and they're all at a different level. But what was interesting was that no one around that table stopped to think about the extended enterprise, which is...
And the extended customer experience.
Absolutely. Who do I have to partner with to improve what I do today and do it better to provide that service to my customer? And
so what was the example with the airline and the beverage?
Well, the biggest example was that the airline spoke about what they were doing, the transport organisation, and I said, look, just off the top of my head, the airline, did you actually think maybe you should be partnering with the retail wine provider to improve the quality of the wine that's on the airline, and the transport organisation ensuring that the public transport, the train systems, the buses,
the hire cars, all that sort of thing.
The hire cars were already there waiting at the destination, and so that you could jointly develop a solution where it's a one-stop shop to improve the customer's experience, and they can pick the wine, pick what they want to eat, and ensure that there is a limo or a private car or a taxi or a bus or a train at the other end, so that we're taking all that guesswork out. You're no longer operating in a silo. What would the new customer to you look like?
And what was their reaction when
they were just blown away? And that's what blew me away, is that everyone's jumping at the digital transformation journey, but no one's really thinking about how that will drive new streams of revenue, and by partnering, how much more they could be doing. Because I think unless you're prepared to partner moving forward, I don't think you're going to be around for very long, because there is no one organisation out there that is doing everything. Everyone's partnering with everybody in search of extending that enterprise and driving the shareholder value.
And this is transforming the value chain. It's enabling businesses to collectively disrupt themselves rather than having newcomers come along and pick them off.
Correct.
Bit by bit.
Yeah, and if you're trying to do everything, you become an elephant.
Mm-hmm.
And the newcomers are now coming into your space with relatively low technology entry points. As I said earlier, it's not technology that drives outcomes; it's ideas.
New thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, new thinking. Hey, we should do this. They don't need to go head on head with you. If you're in a business of X and suddenly you've got 4 new competitors that are coming in and doing each a component of what you do, you could be out of business in 12 to 24 months. So for you to exist and coexist, think about who you could be partnering without having to reinvent the wheel, and fostering those relationships and having open systems that allow my back-end environment to talk to your back-end environment seamlessly, so that we look like one environment to the customer is where I'm going.
So I wonder what the new challenges will be in a decade once so many businesses have digitally transformed, working with each other more closely. Others have fallen by the wayside, disrupted, or sold themselves off in the customer bases. How do you think, what are the challenges you think we might be dealing with in a decade after what should have been a successful transformation period?
If I had the answer to that, I wouldn't be sitting here doing this interview, Alex. Look, it mind boggles.
Yeah.
The possibilities are limitless. Like I said, your only limitation is really your imagination in this game.
Yeah.
And that's why, you look at what Amazon's just gone through. Who would have thought, 10 years ago when they were selling books, to moving books online to
selling everything.
Now selling platforms and infrastructure, and I'm hearing they're now moving into retail in Australia.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a phenomenal story. I'd love to hear the visionaries behind that business would be amazing. And the sort of work that I guess the likes of the Googles are doing with their search engine optimization and the robotics and
AI.
They could get into banking tomorrow. Phenomenal customer base. They know your every move.
And in fact, they already have with the Android Pay, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay. They're
correct.
They've made those moves already.
Yeah, but moving into banking in their own right.
Yeah.
And insurance, and this the sort of driverless car and how that's going to affect, and IoT, the Internet of Things, and everything at your fingertips, everything being done for you. Hopping into a car, reading the paper. God help you if you're that Porsche driver. You're not really going to need it because the experience is gone. But I don't know. I mean, it's a really exciting time for us. I think it's an exciting time for a lot of organisations that are doing some really cool things. And the good thing about Software AG is, we're talking to organisations that are at one extreme of really pushing technology to its limits, to other organisations just about to embark on the journey, and it's a really exciting time to help them.
Now, as we get towards the end of the interview, I always ask questions to sort of change things up a little bit, and that's simply to ask if you could please share what you think is the best piece of advice that you've ever received to help you get where you are today.
Somebody once said to me, Gordon, be who you are because everyone else is taken. And that's pretty much what I've lived by. Software AGs, we don't profess to be something we're not. We don't. We're not a supplier of databases or hardware.
You're not a telco.
We're not a telco. we know what we are,
yeah.
And we're an organisation helping other organisations digitally transform and be better at what they do.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what we do.
And so, do you have then any additional? Because that's like a final message. Do you have any additional final messages for ITWire viewers and readers, and for your current and future customers who are possibly watching right now?
Sure. If you're looking to embark on a digital transformation journey, you don't know where to start, give us a call. We'd be more than happy to help you.
Gordon, thank you very much for your time, and hope to talk to you again in the future.
Thanks for taking the time, Alex.
Thank
Cheers.
you.